What if I told you that there's a new hypercar that says you to electrification and digital tech? A car that packs over 1,000 horsepower from a naturally aspirated V12, paired with a manual transmission. Sounds too good to be true. Well, the Nilu27 is here to shake up the automotive world. But who's behind this automotive rebellion? What makes the Nilu27 stand out in a sea of high-tech hypercars? And just how extreme is this back-to-basics approach? This is the Nilu27, the hypercar that's got enthusiasts drooling and the tech nerds scratching their heads. Let's start with the mastermind behind this automotive madness. Sasha Selipanov might not be a household name, but his work certainly is. This is the guy who's had his hands on some of the most jaw-dropping cars of the last decade. We're talking the Bugatti Chiron, the Koenigsegg Gemera, and the CC850. Not a bad resume, right? But Selipanov wasn't content just designing for others. He had a vision of a hypercar that goes against every trend in the modern automotive world, and thus the Nilu27 was born. But what's with the name? Well, it's not just some random combination of letters and numbers. Nilu comes from combining Selipanov's two daughters' names, and 27, that's a nod to the racing number of two of his favourite F1 drivers, Gilles Villeneuve and Jean Alesi. It's personal, it's passionate, and it sets the tone for everything that this brand stands for. Selipanov isn't just aiming to create a one-off wonder. He's planning a lineup of cars over the next decade. But let's talk about the Nilu27 hypercar itself. One look at this beast and you know it's something special. But what exactly are we looking at here? Selipanov describes the design as inevitable, a word that might seem odd at first, but starts to make sense the more you look at the car. It's as if every line, every curve, every angle was meant to be exactly where it is. It's a design that feels both familiar and completely new at the same time. The inspiration? Well, it's a bit of everything really. There's a touch of classic Italian flair, a hint of 1960s Formula 1, and a dash of Le Mans prototypes, even a sprinkle of Bauhaus architecture. It's like Selipanov took all the best bits of automotive history and blended them into one cohesive, stunning package. But don't think for a second that this is just a pretty face. Every aspect of the Nilu27's design serves a purpose. Take those massive air intakes at the front, for instance. They're not just for show, they're feeding air to the radiators, keeping that monstrous V12 cool under pressure. And speaking of that engine, it's on full display at the rear of the car. Why hide such a work of art, right? The entire rear end is essentially absent, giving us a clear view of the engine, suspension, and that glorious exhaust system. It's automotive exhibitionism at its finest. But here's a question for you. In a world where aerodynamics often dictate design, how does the Nilu27 manage to look so good while still sticking to the road? The answer lies in its clever design elements, like the large front splitter, pronounced side skirts, and that aggressive rear diffuser. Its form and function in perfect harmony. But just how powerful is this car really? Let's get to the real meat, that absolutely bonkers V12 engine. In an age where everyone seems to be downsizing, turbocharging, or electrifying, the Nilu27 has gone in the completely opposite direction. This isn't just any V12, mind you. This is a bespoke 6.5-litre naturally aspirated monster designed from the ground up by Hartley Engines in New Zealand. And when I say monster, I mean it. We're talking over 1,000 horsepower here. That's hypercar territory without a single turbo or electric motor in sight. But it's not just about the power, it's how that power is delivered. this engine revs to a mind-bending 12,000 RPM. Can you imagine the sound of 12 cylinders screaming at 12,000 RPM? It's enough to make any petrolhead weak at the knees. The Nilu27's V12 uses what they call a hot V configuration. Instead of cramming turbos between the cylinder banks, Nilu27 has placed the exhaust manifolds there. Why? Well, apart from looking absolutely badass, it helps with heat management and packaging. Plus, it contributes to that earth-shattering exhaust note. Speaking of the exhaust, it's a work of art itself. A 12-into-1 system 3D printed from Inconel. If you're not familiar with Inconel, it's a superalloy used in Formula 1 and aerospace applications. In other words, it's serious stuff. But with all this focus on natural aspiration and high revs, how does the Nilu27 plan to meet modern emission standards? Well, they're not saying much on that front yet. Although, one thing's for sure, this engine is a statement. It's Nilu27 planting their flag and saying, this is what a hypercar should be. But what does this beast look like on the inside? Let's step inside the Nilu27. If you're expecting a spaceship-like interior filled with touchscreens and digital displays, you're in for a surprise. The Nilu27's cockpit is a love letter to analog driving. The first thing you'll notice is the steering wheel. It's round. Yes, in a world of flat-bottom, button-laden steering wheels, Nilu27 has gone back to basics with a simple, round, 3-spoke wheel. It's like something straight out of a 1960s Le Mans racer, and it's absolutely beautiful. Behind that wheel, you'll find a set of analog gauges. No digital screens here, just good old-fashioned dials, and a large tachometer taking center stage. Why? Because in a car that revs to 12,000 RPM, you're going to want to keep a close eye on those revs. But the piece de resistance, this has to be the gearbox. In an era where even Ferrari has abandoned the manual transmission in their top-tier cars, Nilu27 has doubled down. We're talking about a 7-speed manual gearbox, complete with a gated shifter. It's a callback to the golden age of supercars, and it's absolutely glorious. Now, that's all well and good, but what about comfort? Well, Nilu27 hasn't forgotten about that either. The seats are fixed back racing buckets, but they're trimmed in the finest materials. The cabin is Spartan, yes, but what's there is of the highest quality. It's minimalism done right. Okay, so we've talked about its powerful engine, but how fast does this car actually go? In today's world, it's easy to get caught up in numbers. 0 to 60 times, top speeds, lap records, they're all important, sure. But Nilu27 wants us to focus on something else. The experience. That's not to say the Nilu27 is slow. It's far from it. With over 1,000 horsepower pushing a car that weighs just 1,200 kilograms dry, this thing is going to be fast. Really fast. But Nilu27 isn't playing the numbers game. They haven't released official performance figures, instead saying that the 0 to 60 time is driver dependent. In other words, it's up to you and your skills with the manual gearbox. But straight line speed is only part of the story. The Nilu27 is built for the track, and that's where it's really going to shine. The suspension is a double wishbone pushrod setup with extremely long wishbones at the rear. This should translate to precise, responsive handling that makes you feel like a hero behind the wheel. Stopping power comes courtesy of Brembo with their highest performance carbon ceramic brakes. And all that power and grip is put to the ground through a set of Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R tyres. Some of the stickiest road legal rubber that you can get. But how will all this translate to the real world? what does the future hold for Nilu27? Well, if this first hypercar is anything to go by, we are in for a treat. The company has announced plans for an initial run of 15 cars, likely to be track-only beasts. But don't worry if you're looking for something a bit more road-friendly. There are also plans for 54 street-legal versions. But Nilu27 isn't stopping there. Remember, this is just the beginning of a planned lineup spanning the next decade. What could be next? A GT car with the same philosophy? A hardcore track toy? The possibilities are endless. And let's not forget the bigger picture. In a world racing towards electrification, Nilu27 is proving that there's still a place for analog, driver-focused machines in the upper echelons of the automotive world. So, what do you think? Is Nilu27 the hypercar we've all been waiting for? Or will it not survive in today's eco-conscious world? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more automotive content. Until next time.